In today's show, we're looking at NBA draft prospects with Sam from the Draft Dummies, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We are here for part 2. Well, actually part 4 of our NBA Draft Prospects series, but part 2 with today's guest. And today's guest, I might as well just bring him right in. Actually, you know what? I won't, because I've got to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. At only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, is only worth it if you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the Ultra Moment segment coming up later in the episode. Now, I'll tell you about today's guest. You heard him yesterday. It is Sam Ferris from the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast and the Draft Dummies. Sam, welcome back.
Thank you again for having me on. And I will say that yesterday, unfortunately, we talked about some of the guys that I might be a bit lower on than the consensus, but one or two that we're going to talk about today, I am actually higher on than the consensus. So good to get maybe a little bit of positive Sam today.
Oh yeah, well let's go. Let's see how you feel about this guy, because again, since I did my first mock draft a couple of weeks ago, this guy has actually jumped up on my calculations, and that is, if you can see the screen already, we're talking about Moody, who is a wing guard player. I'll put his numbers up on the screen for people to see. Basically a solid scorer, shooter type player. Played for Arkansas, 6'6" guard. He's 19. He averaged 17 points with 2 threes. He had a 57 true shooting. Good from the free throw line. Solid rebounder for his size as well. 6 boards per game. Is this one of the guys that you're higher on?
Yeah, this is one of the guys that I had in mind. Starting with the physical tools, he measured at 6'6", but even more impressive, a 7-foot wingspan. So that is a huge differential, especially kind of with more of a perimeter player. So he's got kind of that size and length to start it out. And, you know, one of the biggest swing skills with most prospects is the jump shot. And I project that Moses Moody will be, you know, one of the top jump shooters in this class.
What's he like in terms of just being an offensive hub sort of guy that can, as an ISO one-on-one guy, as a high usage player, do you think he can develop into that I am the number one offensive player type?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think that is one of the questions with him. We always talk about context, and with Moody, he's been a guy that's been able to play a good role in very good teams in his life. So he played for Montverde in high school, which was probably the best high school team ever. Played for a very good Arkansas team last year in college. So we know he can fit in and play a good role on a good team. But like you said, the question is, how far can he take his game personally in terms of being, the guy offensively? And I wish we could have seen him kind of push the bounds, push the envelope a bit more in college, but we did see it at times, and I do buy the pull-up jumper coming along. He's not a great athlete, and I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to put a ton of pressure on the rim offensively. But in terms of the archetype of, like, if he does become an all-star, I think you're looking at maybe a Chris Middleton-like player offensively, where the catch and shoot is good, and he can get his off the bounce off 1 or 2 dribbles really well. And he's kind of a similar frame as Middleton as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to suggest, is he anything like, say, a little bit of a taller Donovan Mitchell in terms of the offensive game? But the Middleton one with that extra size and that big wingspan, I think, is a pretty good comp for Moody. To me, if I'm the Orlando Magic with picks 5 and 8, I'm trying to make sure I get a hold of him with one of those picks, whether that is at pick 5 or pick 8, I don't know. But he, to me, would fit what they need, plus a really solid player, or really it could be a really good player for them in one of those selections. So where do you sort of have him? Is it just below that second tier of Mobley, Green, Suggs?
Yeah, so I pretty much have a 3-man tier after that tier you just discussed. I have Suggs, Mobley, Green, and then after that I have Giddey, Barnes, and Moses Moody is also in that group. And just the fact that I think his jump shot is so projectable is very important. I mean, NBA teams need at least 4 guys that can space the floor on, at any given time out on the court. So you need guys that can shoot. That's huge. And I also think he's a very high IQ guy with good length. So he does make up for average to subpar athleticism with that IQ and length. He just tends to be in the right spot all the time defensively and kind of mucks things up. And with that length too, I think he can guard kind of both 2s and 3s.
It's a tough choice for the Michelob Ultra moment, but considering we've talked about only one player today, it's got to be Moses Moody, who had the our favorite Ultra moment out of the guys that we've discussed so far. What would you say that Moses Moody's Ultra moment of the year was?
Did he have one big moment? Just I don't know, just playing a role for a good Arkansas team, I think. Unfortunately, he did not have his biggest moment in the NCAA tournament, but he was very good in the SEC tournament. So 1 for 2 on tournaments as a freshman, you'll take it. I loved his play in the SEC tournament.
I'm sure that Moses Moody brought you joy. He brought Razorback fans joy and happiness, and enjoyment isn't the end game. It is the whole game. So Moses Moody, his Ultra moment in that SEC tournament, fantastic. Only 2.6 grams of carbs in Michelob Ultra, 95 calories. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. That joy creates success. So make sure you are getting out on social media, tagging what you think is the hashtag Ultra moment of the year. Michelob Ultra moment of the year goes to Moses Moody. All right, let's go on to our next player we're going to talk about here. And this is another guy who's probably going to be a lottery selection out of the Big Ten, and that is Franz Wagner from Michigan, a second-year college player who saw his minutes marginally increase in his sophomore year versus his freshman year. But what he was able to do was just show solid improvements across the board. 3 percentage point increase in his three-point shooting, 2.5% over his field goal percentage. He rebounded the ball a little bit better, scored an extra point per game. Just seems to be that guy who does most things pretty well without doing anything at a standout level. The free throw shooting is good. He's a low usage player. He's a nice connector who can defend. 1.3 steals, 1 block per game. They're really good numbers. And I think you look at the Wagner name and you go, well, is he Mo's brother? And yes, he is. But he's also a very, very different player to his brother. He's shorter. He's a better defender. He's a better passer. He's a very different player to his brother. And how is my characterization of him? Do you think that's accurate?
Yes, very accurate. He's definitely more athletic and more of a perimeter kind of wing type player than his brother. You mentioned the word connector piece offensively. That's a very good way to describe it. One phrase that I've used is he's kind of a grease guy offensively, where no matter who you play him with, he's just going to make the offense run more smoothly, as well as on the defensive side of the ball. He's also a guy that is very good in rotation, and he's much bigger kind of than you would think as well. So I view him as kind of actually a 4 at the next level. And I think your point about we kind of know what he is also accurate. I don't think he has the widest range of outcomes. I don't see him as an all-star level player, but I also don't see him busting out of the league either. I think he's got one of the kind of smallest range of outcomes, but those outcomes are good and those outcomes are valuable.
The way that I sort of view him, and again, you correct me if I'm wrong here because I haven't been viewing these players as much as you have, but almost what he does is sort of late career Rudy Gay, like not 20 point per game, Memphis or even Toronto Rudy Gay, but more post Achilles San Antonio Spurs Rudy Gay type of player, a guy that can defend pretty well, can pass okay, can shoot okay, can do the little bits and pieces that are needed without having to extend into a huge number one option role.
Yeah, but I would say he doesn't really have the mentality of a scorer so much. He has the mentality more of a guy that will attack off the catch and make good decisions. He's definitely more of a team and pass first guy.
So is that more like a Kyle Anderson sort of an archetype?
Yeah. So I'd say Kyle Anderson is actually a really good comparison. And kind of along those same lines, Kyle Anderson is bigger than you think and is a better defender than you might think. Same with Wagner. He is very good rotating around the rim. He had games with 4 or 5 blocks, including one of the best defensive performances in all of college basketball last year. His game against Northwestern, I'm pretty sure he blocked 5 jump shots. He's just a very good defensive player, a guy that will just make things run smoothly offensively. He's not a guy that's going to score 25 points per game. So if you're looking for that, he's not the guy to pick. I also don't see him making multiple All-Stars, but I think he's going to be a guy that plays his role and is a positive on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, so I guess that's when you're looking at drafting players, what are you looking for? Is there that swing for the fence player, or do you just need someone to come in and go, well, I've drafted someone, cost-controlled contract, got him under team control for 8 or 9 years, and he's going to be a rotation guy for all of those 8 or 9 years, and just be, best case scenario, 4th starter, worst case, 7th rotation, 7th man in the rotation, whatever it is, and just really solid production in all facets of the game. And that's sort of the way that Wagner strikes me. And you've given us your take on that as well, which seems very, very similar. So Wagner does have that ability, and again, just don't compare him to his brother. They're very, very different in terms of position and fit and skill sets and what they're able to do, even from a fantasy perspective as well. Now, this next guy took a big step forward this year, and that is Mann of Florida. His first year as a freshman, he only started 4 games. He played 18 minutes a game and scored 5 points and shot 28% from 3. This year it was quite a different scenario for Mann because he averaged 16 points. He shot over 40% from 3 on almost 5 attempts per game. His usage went up. He played 32 minutes a night. He started every game. He generated steals. He's a 6'4" point guard. He's 20 years of age. Now, the assist numbers aren't what you would hope out of a point guard, 3.5 per game. So is that because it's always got to be context, as we've said multiple times over the last 2 shows with these numbers. Is that because his teammates don't hit shots? Is it because he just had to create so much for himself? Is it because he's a bad passer and facilitator?
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's bad, but I wouldn't say that's one of his biggest strengths either. I don't necessarily see him as just, a straight point guard with, supernatural feel and passing and ability to set guys up. He's kind of more of a get your own. And so kind of what's really fascinating to me about him actually is the way that he moves out there. So if you actually watch him on tape, it's interesting because he is a good athlete, but he doesn't really necessarily play like one. So again, if you watch him, he kind of glides and shuffles around the floor, but he never really picks his feet up that high off the ground. It's kind of interesting. But because of that, he can change direction really well. So one thing I like to say about great NBA players is, of course, all NBA players are great athletes, but you look at some of the best NBA players, and they are unique athletes in different ways, whether it's Harden's deceleration, KD's balance, Steph's hand-eye coordination. Well, Mann has this unique ability to change directions and create shots, whether it's step backs or crossovers into floaters. So to me, that's kind of the most unique, interesting aspect of his game, is just that unique movement ability with the ball and to create separation off the bounce.
Interesting for Mann as well is he's a guy that was able to, most of his threes, I think, or a large portion of his threes were unassisted. So really that self-creation for him is big, and that can be a really big thing for an NBA player. But we've referenced Jordan Clarkson before. Is he this guy that is more of that 6th man combo guard, Jordan Clarkson, Lou Williams, Jamal Crawfordy sort of player? What's his defense like? Is that the sort of role that NBA teams would be envisaging him to jump into, or would teams not fool themselves, or teams have the hope that he can be our lead ball handler?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of in between on him because, like you mentioned at the beginning, he made such a massive leap from freshman to sophomore year that I might be willing to bet that there's a bit more there in terms of just his development moving forward. It's interesting because to your point, I don't necessarily love or view him as having many ancillary aspects, whether it's defense, rebounding, passing. So I don't know that he's going to be a great role player. I'd say maybe a median or slightly below average outcome for him would be kind of an Anthony Simons, which is similar to the guys that you mentioned, can really create his own shot, especially, from 3, taking step backs or pull-ups. He can do really well. I'll just be interested to see to what level he can get with that self-creation, and whether there is another step or two that he can really take.
Sam, do you ever fix your own car?
Do I ever fix my own car?
Yeah.
No, I did replace the battery, and I did replace the tire. So I can say that I did that. So I am learning.
That's one step better than me. I've replaced tires, not batteries. But if you are someone who does like fixing their own car, Rock Auto is the place that you need to be going. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why would you endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer? I believe you have a computer, so why don't you order your own parts directly from rockauto.com? Save time and money from Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend 30, 50, 100% more on the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer. They are a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go and explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck and write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, it is time for our next player, and we've done a few of these sort of guys over the two shows here, Sam, and we're talking about Josh Christopher, the guard from Arizona State. He is 6'5", and another one of those players that probably hasn't really met a shot that he didn't want to take. Is that a fair, one sentence description of what Christopher's game's like?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, like you said, we've covered a lot of these guys. Trey Mann, book night yesterday. And what's funny is Cody and I thought these guys were so kind of interesting and similar that we did our own episode where we talked about and ranked all these guys together. And then Cam Thomas was the other guy that we included in this group. Yep. So kind of if you want a deeper breakdown where we ranked all these guys on a variety of different categories, give that a listen. But yeah, in terms of just the high level, somewhat similar to Trey Mann, but he does have a more impressive physical profile where he's very strong. He's a good finisher at the rim. And when he has a chance to kind of load, he is a very good leaper, including some pretty spectacular chase down blocks.
So he averaged 14 points per game for Arizona State, 43% from the field, 80 from the line, 25% usage. The steal numbers pretty nice, half a block a game. Like, not going to do huge amounts in terms of creation for others. That's not what his role is on this team. Didn't play a huge amount, just 15 games. So what were the concerns with the lack of games there with Christopher?
Yeah, again, context with him. I thought Arizona State wasn't a great team for him. He didn't have really anyone creating for him. Didn't get the touches that I would have liked to have seen. And of course, it was just difficult for everyone last year with COVID, especially these freshmen. But for him, again, the question mark is the jump shot. He loves to create his own shot kind of in the mid-range to create and take tough mid-range jump shots. I just don't know if an NBA team is really going to give him the keys to do that. So he's going to need to knock down 3-point jump shots. And I'm just a bit iffy on that still at this point in time. And so that's why I might view him just a little bit lower. But the physical profile is impressive. He was a very good high school player. So he does have that going for him. And again, I like the tools that he has. But like with so many guys, it's do you buy the projection of that jump shot?
Yeah, like he shot, 31% from three? So you're right. Like as a scorer, the shot we need to rely upon him more. But he also didn't get to the rim a huge amount. We didn't draw many free throws, just 31% free throw rate. Which again, if you're not hitting threes, you'd like someone to be drawing more free throws to get that efficient scoring, and that's why his true shooting is as low as it is. Defensively, you mentioned the chase down blocks. Is that just highlight defense, or can he be a solid defender on top of that?
So those are obviously the highlights, but this might be a surprise to some, but I actually do like him defensively. Not that he's going to be a great NBA defender, but for this archetype that we've talked about, where it's kind of these, I don't want to say chucker, but guys that create and take tough shots offensively. Usually those guys aren't that good defensively, but I think Christopher can be. He's got the physical tools. He's got the strength. He can move pretty well side to side. He also has very good hands. So, comparing him to the guy we talked about in Trey Mann, I do prefer Christopher's tools and kind of his hands defensively. So I think he can get to a higher level defensively than him.
He's also a little bit bigger than Trey Mann. About I think 6'5" versus 6'4", and again a lot more defensive ability and a little bit more probably explosion around the rim as well, which probably puts him ahead of that group. Although the 40% shooting from Mann versus 30% for Christopher might swing things for other people in the other direction. Let's talk about the next guy on our list, another guard. And I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. Dosunmu. Is that how correct is that for pronunciation for the Illinois guard?
That was pretty good. Yeah. Have you tried Rocco Percussion yet?
No, I haven't. He's I believe he is coming up in the next couple of days in terms of. Oh no, he's not. He's next week. He's coming up. So I'm pretty excited about talking about him to be honest. But yeah, Rocco Percussion. All right, I got to practice that one. I had to practice my Alperen Şengün for yesterday's or not yesterday, 2 days ago's show. Also, but Dosunmu, guard out of Illinois. Played 3 years, so he's a junior. Increased his scoring numbers every year. Got to 35 minutes last season. I probably should put those stats up on the screen for people to take a look at. 20 points per game. He averaged 6 boards and 5 assists, over a steal. Shot 39% from 3, which is a big jump up from the 30% from the year before. But not a huge amount of 3-point attempts, under 3 per game, which is a very low 3-point attempt rate for a guy that was hitting them again at a really high rate. He's a 6'5" point guard. He's 21 years of age. He turns 22 halfway through the NBA season, so a little bit older. Is he a true point guard one, or is he a combo sort of a guard?
I think he's definitely a combo sort of guard. And, just to start out, I am a bit lower on him compared to kind of these other guards that we've talked about. Both just in terms of, he's a bit older, so he's just further along on his development curve. But also, he does a lot of things decently well. He's a solid finisher. He was a very good closer in college. He was a clutch player. He shot it, all right. But if you had to ask me, what does Dosunmu do at like a starting NBA guard level? I just don't know that he really does anything. So I do view him more as kind of a backup. And though he is 6'5", he doesn't really play that big. So I don't view him as like checking defensively bigger, guys or anything. So it's not like he provides a ton of versatility either. And so that's just not necessarily kind of the archetype that I would be targeting in the second round.
So would you leave him undrafted?
No, I would take him in the second round, but I just feel like if you look at most consensus boards, he's ended the first round, beginning of the second. So to me, that opportunity cost is just a bit too high. There are other guys that I think have a bit more intriguing kind of upsides or higher end outcomes than him. So I just think, if I were an actual GM, that he would just get taken before I would realistically consider him.
So in terms of his passing ability, like 5 assists, not a bad number for college, but can he be a guy that makes NBA reads and works in NBA pick and roll?
Sure, but I don't see him as like a starter, but maybe off the bench, he's a guy that can, share some ball handling duties, run some pick and roll. Again, as a second unit guy, I think that would kind of be the best use for him. But I don't think you ever want him out there as kind of your only ball handler either. I think he's going to need another guy to kind of share those duties with. So
it sort of puts him as like a player almost without a position, like as a point guard who you don't want to be a point guard, but not the level of scorer or 3-point shooter to be a completely scoring guard. So he's sort of in that middle range there, which is probably going to consign him to a bench role for majority of his career. Now, the next guy and the last guy we're going to talk about here, Sam, a very interesting prospect, and that's Filip Petrusev, who did play in college for 2 years, played for Gonzaga, and then went over to Europe to play for KK Mega BMAX, which you may remember is the team that Nikola Jokic used to play. I'm sure you remember, but other listeners may remember that is Nikola Jokic's former team. And he went out there last season and put up some huge numbers. He averaged 21 points per game across all competitions in 30 minutes. He averaged 7.5 boards. He blocked a shot. He hit 46% of his threes on 3 attempts per game. Even look, his numbers, even as a sophomore at Gonzaga, he averaged 18 and 8. He hit 18% of his threes, but that change, I think, is the biggest thing that stands out. He took total in that sophomore year in Gonzaga 11 threes, and he hit 2 of them. He goes over to Mega BMAX, and he hit 26 of 62, so he was taking 3 per game. It's 43 of 93 across all competitions. So it's a big difference in the three. So obviously he's more confident in the shot because he's taking more of them. Do you buy this, that he can be a legitimate stretch 5-y type of option?
Yeah, I do buy that he can be a stretchy 5, but I don't think he's going to be shooting 46% from 3 in the NBA. That. Yeah, and so it's really interesting with him because, like you said, went to Gonzaga. I'm from Spokane. I'm a Gonzaga basketball fan. It was just really interesting situation because it was almost like a mutual agreement to move on, and he left to play overseas, which was fantastic for him. But it was also great for Gonzaga because Drew Timme was better than Petrusev. And then I guess go to Europe because you develop your skills there very quickly. On top of the 3-point jump shot, he's got a really nice push shot that will be effective for him, kind of in pick and rolls. Think like a Rashawn Holmes type shot there. And he's a guy that can post up and score. So he's got tools. He's certainly expanded his repertoire, and he has really developed the skill level. So I love to see that. Like you said, the stats were pretty monstrous, not just in terms of the raw numbers, but the jump from what he did at Gonzaga is awesome to see. I love to see guys working on their games and really improving like that.
Yeah, look, he had a PR of 25, a true shooting of 65, a usage of almost or close to 30%, which is, these are insane type numbers. But when you see European big men who are shooting threes, the standard question is going to be, can he defend? So, can he defend?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's going to be that good defending pick and roll. That's going to be an issue like it is with a lot of these guys. Like, he can do fine if other 5s post him up, but that's not really the question with these guys, right? The question is, how well do they do in space? Do they need to be great? No, but you would like if they are not picked on and if they can at least kind of hold their own guarding pick and roll. That's just kind of the way and the direction that the NBA has moved. So again, it's just not necessarily the archetype of player that I'm looking to draft. In the second round, I'm looking to draft guys that maybe are one aspect of their game away from being a core piece of a playoff team. And, a good example of that has been Terrence Mann, where the guy has the size, has the athleticism, has the feel to guard and play multiple positions. He just needed that jump shot to come along, and it has. And all of a sudden, that guy is a core piece of the Clippers, in my opinion, moving forward. I just don't see Petrusev really having that value. But I mean, if a team likes him at a certain point in the second round, views him as kind of a backup big, then go ahead and take the swing on that. I just don't think the value of trying to draft a backup big is really worth the capital until, maybe the last 15 picks of the second round.
It's interesting to see how he ends up developing because, again, those numbers are intriguing. Whether he can turn into a full-time starter is probably a pretty big question mark at this point. But yeah, you've got to be intrigued by that improvement and that big step up going from Gonzaga over to Mega BMAX for this last season. That'll do it. That's our 6 prospects done for today. We did another 6 yesterday. Sam, tell everyone what they can do or what they can expect from your work, where they find it, what you're doing, and your social media stuff.
Yeah, so you can follow us at Draft Dummies. I like to post clips there, stats, my thoughts on the draft, just some of my theory and beliefs as it pertains to the NBA draft and team building. We're just doing all type of work right now, and you can find our episodes on the Locked On NBA Draft channel every Wednesday, but all of the hosts there are fantastic. We're doing scouting reports, mock drafts, player and positional rankings, doing all this as we gear up for the draft at the end of July. So this time of the year is the most fun for us, and we're just really enjoying it.
Sam, it's been awesome having you on the last 2 days. Thank you for coming on and talking NBA draft prospects. We're going to do more NBA draft stuff in the coming weeks as we head towards the NBA draft. Guys, don't forget, not only check out Locked On NBA Draft, but follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app while on YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, flick the notification bell, hit your red subscribe, share it with friends, comment, whatever you need to do, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.